march towards not. It's not just gradual, just.
Come in.
All right.
Alright.
Yep. Thank you all for joining. Vincent's ready to get started. So whenever, I'll let you introduce yourself. Are you good with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. We are recording and that's all. I'll let you take it over, Vincent.
Okay. My name is Vincent Lyon, and I'm here today with Dr. Sean Quallen to present mapping accessibility, which covers the problem areas on sidewalks at the University of Idaho. And that's what you see on the first slide here. So next slide. So here's a QR code and a link to the map. If you want to look at it throughout this presentation, I would recommend that. And while you're doing that, I want to tell you a little bit about why I decided to do this project. So about 2 years ago, when I transferred to the University of Idaho, it was over the summer. And during that summer, it was also the first time I got my electric wheelchair. And for me, that was a very exciting moment where I could finally go out and explore some areas that I used to do a lot of times beforehand. So I headed to the university over the summer, and it was very fun at first until I went down Sweet Avenue and I got stuck in that sidewalk trying to go forward, and I could not. And I tried to go back, and there was no way to get back due to disjointed sidewalks. So that meant I had to drive on the street, and that was the first time I ever did so, but it was not the last time that I did. So fast forward a year, throughout going to classes, different parts of the university, I encountered many such areas that were an inconvenience or outright just dangerous for me to traverse. And those feelings that I had while doing that, sometimes I would get stuck and I would feel embarrassed for myself. So I would need help, someone to push me out, and I felt like an inconvenience. And it made me sad as well because I felt somewhat invisible. Like these issues were here and there's so many of them. And it was very difficult for me mentally and emotionally. So I kind of got mad at a certain point, a little pissed off, and that's when I came into Cedar and started working with Corey and Eric Matson on documenting the sidewalks. Next slide. So what the project is about is helping new students know where to go on campus to avoid danger and risk to themselves. That was something that I really wanted when I first came here, and I had to learn out the hard ways, which ways are the best ways and which ones aren't. I think it's very important for new students to have this information for themselves to decide if they want to come here, because it's exciting to go to university, but it's not exciting going there and then realizing you won't be safe while doing so. The map also serves a great function for the university to know where these areas are at on campus. It's a very detailed list, 57 plus locations that I have, and there are many more that I haven't added in the map, but it's also to raise awareness on campus about many physical barriers that we do see. This map just focuses on the sidewalks, but there are other such barriers that I encounter daily that need to be talked about as well. So here's the equipment that I used while starting to document the process. And originally I had rented a GoPro from the university library, but it didn't really pan out too well for me. Some of the video that I recorded with it originally was shaky because of the equipment they had wasn't too secure. And I hated having to rent it and then return it. And I wanted something of my own, just so I could also use it for future projects. So I went to Walmart and I got the GoPro 10 for $230. And along with that, I got the equipment that you see in the middle slide. And there's a chest harness you can kind of see on the right-hand side where I would kind of hook up some of the different pieces together to mount the camera. And instead of mounting it to my chest, I would wrap it around my legs. That way you can get the low down POV that you see in the video if you look at it on the laptop. To edit the video, I used a software editing Wondershare Filmora. It's the one I was comfortable with, but there are many others that you can do and use. It's up to you. But all in all, $275 startup cost to start doing this project is, in the grand scheme of things, pretty inexpensive. And it has the potential to be used for other projects on universities or even in the city. Next slide, please. So when I first started, my main objective was to just record me driving down all of the sidewalks on campus, and that worked out pretty well, but it was also pretty long. It didn't really show what I wanted people to see. So eventually I identified that there were problem areas I wanted to highlight, and I would make shorter videos to show that. So you see in the right-hand side, there's the new videos and old videos, and each of those have 2 hours of footage in total. I had to redo my original footage to make it more stable and friendly to look at. On top of that, there was 57 plus photos, and the good thing about the GoPro that I got is that you can take photos with it. So you can stop during your recording and take a snapshot and then upload it and be able to drag it in really easy. So it started off with just one folder, kind of the raw files, and you learn as you go that you need to be more organized just to help speed up the process, but also to know what you want to show as well. And at the top there, you can see the action map folder, just kind of what got Sean and I inspired to work together on this project. Next slide, please. So this is the original action map that I showed at the Cedar Advisory Board meeting. And the blue is video that I had originally recorded before that meeting, and then the yellow were the future plans. For me, it was a good way to see this visually, to know which areas I need to go to on campus. And it was also a upgraded version of a map that Eric and I worked on, where we used a marker and I think some highlighters to take a campus directory map. So, I mean, it's the precursor to the map that you see on your phones and laptops. It highlights the problem areas in red, and it's a little basic, but it's definitely the inspiration for the map that Sean and I were able to work on together. And through that, we used Google Mind Maps to get started on this. And it's a very accessible tool, I think, and it's very easy to use as well. Anyone can do it to make any sort of map they want to show people. It could be locations. I remember Sean showed me a demo that he and people made at his office, and it was really smart and really cool. And then there's other, I think, tools that you can add on to it. I'm not sure. But when I started using it, it was extremely fun. And I'll show you some of the details in the next slide. So to get started on the map, whenever you click on a location on the street, it adds a pinpoint. And through that pinpoint, you can start customizing it, colors, emblems, right? So what I did was, when I had the pinpoint, I would attach a photo to it. But in order to get the pinpoint accurate, I would take the longitude and latitude of the location of the photo, and I would make them match. This was not an easy process at first. I used Google Earth originally to find, the sidewalk projects or the problems. And then I used a regular Google map to get the longitude and latitude to put in the mind maps that I created. So it was a whole process, but it worked out pretty well. And you can see on the right-hand side, this says problem areas 3, 4, and 5. And I based off of a scale of green, yellow, and red. And I just want to preface that it's my own subjective opinion on how severe I think the issues are for many of these problem areas. I try to be fair. Green for me, it was just either minor inconveniences, kind of like rough stuff to drive on, not the most fun, but nothing that will seriously harm anybody by driving over it. The yellow is more or less like, for me, I have a lightweight chair. So some areas are more risky for me to traverse and harder for me to get over when sidewalks are disjointed and uneven. So I considered other people's mobility aids, which are stronger than mine, could probably get over more areas. So I try to be fair in that regard and make sure that the areas actually mattered to the color that they were prescribed. And then the red, I think, is the worst areas, and that's one that you see at the bottom right there. With that utterly destroyed sidewalk, it doesn't matter what mobility aid you're using or anything. Many of the areas too are tripping hazards, so I try to account for that too in my descriptions, and that comes into the fine tuning of the details, just to make sure that it's representing what it needs to. The colors are according, and that there's a description to go along with it, and photo and video. So I had to double check 57 times 2 times, which is pretty fun. Next slide, please. So what's next? in this project. I was thinking of ways how to push this project forward for the university. And many of them could be addressed with short-term solutions and long-term solutions. And I'm going to cover that going forward now. So for short-term solutions, many of the areas on campus that are pretty damaged and hard to drive over are spots like on the left where there's kind of like, you know, a little minor disruption like a ravine or a canyon, you could say. And those don't need, I guess, complete rebuilds, but rather they just need quick fill-ins. You can go on YouTube and watch people do it. It's cheap. It seems cheap for me, at least. I wanted to do it myself. But many areas on the university sidewalks are like that. And then on the right-hand side, you see what I was talking about earlier, disjointed sidewalks meeting together. This is the sidewalk I originally came to at the University of Idaho when I transferred. And I got stuck by driving over that and I couldn't go back the other way. So to solve that, you need to bevel the higher slab down to the lower one at a slope angle. And I believe the ADA, like, recommendation for it is if there is such a, steep incline like that, that's more than a half an inch, it needs to be beveled down to a quarter inch. And that's probably the second most common issue on sidewalks that I encounter. And it can be very jarring too, especially if areas like this are covered with leaves or snow. It just presents more risk to like hurt your mobility device. Someone could trip and really hurt themselves. And that doubles for like the red area on campus too, where there's just utter destruction. Next slide, please. The long-term solutions, I'm not the most knowledgeable on this, but I would love to see the university make a detailed plan going forward to address some of the major areas while focusing on the short term. Meanwhile, this means complete like replacement or repair of a lot of the damaged sidewalks that you see on the two left. Those would likely need complete rebuilding. This one on the far right is near the student union building on campus, and it's one that I found out kind of the hard way. It's a pretty long sidewalk to get to that point. And you have to turn all the way back around, which is a little inconvenient. And it's also scary that you go across it. For me, I felt like I was going to fall into the street a lot of times crossing some of these areas. And I mean, that was pretty much the main part of recording too. It was just a lot of fear, a lot of nervousness, and a lot of like damage to my chair also. So that's what I have for the long-term solutions.
Vinny, what's the approximate cost of your chair?
$2,000. So what can we do as a community? These three all tie together, right? It's about raising like awareness of issues like this. What can we do? We can look for these areas of concern on sidewalks or other issues inside buildings. Like some of these issues on sidewalks aren't exclusive, just the sidewalks. You see a lot of like doors trying to get into certain classrooms on campus where you have to be relocated because you can't get in them because there's too high of a vertical steep like change in the doorway. And lastly, just communicate with each other when we do see these issues to fellow staff members, to peers, to those higher up that could make a change. It's just spreading awareness and communicating these issues that we do find. And that's all for me. Thank you.
How many areas do you have on the map total?
There's 57.
All right, so out of 57, how many are like dangerous areas? Do you have a proportion?
I can't remember the exact number. Probably should have known that. I would say the red numbers, I think there's 9, probably 9 in total. I had more originally, but I scaled it back just because I wanted the color to represent actual danger.
It definitely seems like green is much more in the minority on that proportion, which that's where the major business. Yeah, thanks.
How long have you been working on this?
Since November, it took me 2 months, kind of recording on and off. When I did my old video, it was more partitioned out, but when Thanksgiving break came along in December, I got my new camera and I just re-recorded everything within a day.
Oh, I know, that was during all the snow too.
It was lucky. It was sunny and beautiful out.
Score.
Early December.
I
Right?
was gonna say those pictures look really warm.
Right. It was great. And then, yeah, I was able to do that. It took like 4 or 5 hours in total, just driving back and forth to the areas. But I guess luckily from me doing it the first time, it was a little easier. I knew the paths I wanted to take, and I knew how to tackle them too. Which at first I was a little unsure. So it's definitely quicker second time around.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
We'll come back at the end too. I don't want to hijack anything here. I'm Sean Quallen, I'm an instructional designer in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, which is a lot of words. That's why I wrote SEAL up here. I'm also on the Cedar Advisory Board, which has been mentioned was where I first discovered this and was presented this map. I remember that day somewhat, where you pointed out the map instantly, because what I really saw on it was you had already used Google Maps. You were just superimposing on top of it with a secondary program. And being an instructional designer, I thought, hey, you just use Google Maps for that thing. And so I reached out. I reached out to them and said, hey, you ever thought about using Google Maps? It'll do most of the work for you. Okay, so if you would, Eric, really quickly here. Okay, basically, my role in this has been kind of subsidiary from the beginning. I did my job. Okay, I was at work and I said, hey, you know what? You should use a tool for this. That's what I do. Fast forward a couple of months, a couple of weeks, and I guess it was about January or February. I don't remember. I think you just emailed a link to me, an email. Said, hey, I've got a product for you. Check this thing out. Would you, Eric, please? This is what he sent us. Like, oh, wow, okay. Okay, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not some absolute Luddite. I knew what a Google Map was going to look like. I knew what pins were going to look like, but we were slapped in the face with the severity of this thing. Like, oh, wow. I took it to the rest of my team up in Seattle, and instantly, basically the same thing. Oh, wow, that's a lot. There's a lot of those up there. Showed it to some partners, some trusted partners, stakeholders, not stakeholders, colleagues out there that we work with around the university, and it was almost exactly the same response. Oh, wow, that's a lot. Now, I mentioned this earlier to some of you in here. I don't have nobody in my team. We don't have any significant mobility issues. I'm an ice skater, really, really bad at it. I follow my pointy parts a lot, so occasionally I have to hobble. Like I'll limp in, and I once in a while will think, oh, you know what, I should park in the other parking lot because it's easier to get in the lower door, that kind of thing. I don't ever realistically have to think about it at all. And then we were shown this, and instantly we started thinking, oh, this is what some people have to think about on a minute-to-minute basis. Students, people who are already by design under duress. We put you into stressful situations because that's part of education. This shouldn't have to be something you are also considering, the outrageous severity of this map. And so I don't want to, with anything I say here, where I'm going to go on the next couple of slides, I don't want to diminish what Vinny has done. This is laudable. I mean, really, really significant. And you pointed out, Vinny, the awareness of this. I think that's the most significant portion that we're going to get out of this. What I want to present to you is the next several slides, an amalgamation of thoughts, ideas, stuff. Just, I talked with several people about this, and none of this is attributed to any one particular person or even one particular conversation. These are just some ideas that popped out right away from a more institutional level. Would you please, Eric? Okay. The first thing we kind of wanted to kind of point out were the map, made us acutely aware of a university challenge that none of us, what's the right way to say this? None of us have to be acutely aware of. Okay, things that's very easy on our busy schedules to just keep pushing back and back farther into the back of our minds. And so we did do some thinking and talking about what other challenges do we deal with at the institutional level that's a concept like this could also work with. Okay, first one is the obvious one, what we're talking about, not necessarily sidewalks, but other, okay, architectural barriers, I think is the best way to say this kind of thing. We've got some old buildings around here. And the building we're sitting in right now isn't exactly new. Okay, and Eric, I mentioned this to you, like, you know, or Brandon, we were talking earlier about how, you know, we're practically retrofitting retrofits in some of our buildings at this point, yeah. And we're running out of opportunities to do so. Some of the structures that we have don't facilitate some of the standards that we have today. Okay, and so, you know, that these being the challenges, what would something like this provide? Well, a couple of things. Obvious, layering of different styles and types of accessibility barriers. You know, and I mean, I'll just be blunt with the first ones that come to mind. A wheelchair user who has certain accessibility needs versus somebody who maybe has no use of their arms. Those are two very different accessibility considerations. And how could we have multiple maps and multiple different demonstrations of those? And then again, prioritization. This is me, again, still thinking from the administrative side. What can we learn? What can we gather from this? Basic analytics. 95% of the people are looking at this feature on this map, this one building on this map. Okay, what do we gather from that as the institution we lead? Okay, and navigation. This was probably the biggest one that we talked about. You know, we have, just like any other major campus, inaccessible pathways. We have dynamic conditions being things that are deteriorating, things that are under repair for certain periods of time and are blocked off and closed off, and other varying, you know, conditions. The opportunity here being something that can help route students. You already mentioned it, having to backtrack. That's a major one that I've already witnessed in the building I'm in. If you come at it from the wrong side, you got to go back around the other side. And it's a major, major trek. How do we help mitigate all that backtracking and present something to a student or faculty or staff, anybody on this campus? And again, the idea of real-time updating, where this isn't a static thing that facilities dumps on us every 6 months. That's not pointing any fingers at facilities. I realize I just did that out loud. So, but at the same time, you know, in the next couple of slides, we'll start talking about the opportunity for acquiring that data in real time too. Okay, and this, of course, like I said, I think this is far and away the biggest opportunity for something like this. I felt like my eyes were ripped open with the number of pins on that map. The colors, and don't get me wrong, we have routine conversations in the center about certain upper administrative people who, if it's not bright and shiny and colorful, they won't look at it. Okay, and so yeah, I'm not kidding, as silly as that may sound, you know, superficially, the just sheer number and magnitude and right in your face nature of this. The challenge is obviously being lack of awareness, things that, like I said, I don't think about on a regular basis, but other people have to. I would love to see a larger culture of inclusivity around here. I know I'm saying to acquire on that one. Okay, because we lack institutional support because of that lack of culture. Eric, would you please? Okay, these I'm gonna go really quickly because I don't want to keep any. Okay, these were things that we talked about for just basic ideas. Please. Training. How do you, I know Cedar, you and I, we've talked, you know, longingly about having some kind of actual training procedures and opportunities for our faculty that they would use. I can modify with that they would actually do. Where does something like this fit in? You know, it's really easy. Okay, here you go. This photo came from Adobe stock, which we have on campus. I can look up accessibility barriers in Adobe stock and give me like 1,000 pictures of people that I don't know, of buildings that I don't recognize, of stairs that look like every other set of stairs out there. Here's a guy who can't get up the side of the flight of stairs, and it means nothing. Here's a picture of your former student sitting in the, sitting in a wheelchair, perhaps at the bottom of the stairs outside your office for office hours. it's a little more impactful. Trust me, it's a lot more impactful. Okay, and so, as we move toward any kind of, cultural, institutional culture of accessibility, how do we use we could use something like this inside there to show relevance of it. Which please. I don't know what happened to the title. Oh, the title rolls in, that's cute. Hey, I don't know how to, I'll use PowerPoint one of these days. Policy development. This is a big one that I'm not going to comment on because I'm probably not allowed to in some legal framework. But, as we work toward policies, something like this that gives visibility to these issues is worth its weight in gold. Something, again, to certain individuals who it needs to be right in their face and it needs to be powerful. Things like this can really, really make a difference at the end of a 3-hour-long meeting where nothing was said. Now I say that to certain people in this room. Not your meetings, your meetings. But you've been to those same meetings that I'm talking about. Eric, please.
I think we're usually teaming each other.
Why we're still here. And finally, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while with varying different opportunities, not just this one. I've been to conferences that had an app.
Great.
I mean, yeah. I mean, as mundane, I've been to stadiums that basically rewrote the app for every game. I mean, it just included different data for different teams and whatnot. But I mean, we're as far as I can tell, light years behind on the opportunity of leveraging the fact that everybody's got a phone in their pocket. Okay, and so yeah, all of this could easily be implemented into something like that. Again, the real-time navigation and routing, we talked about that, a couple slides ago, but the last one is a big one too. I mean, how often do we get emails asking us to participate in a survey? Great, here's one. Turn on the GPS tracking on your phone, students. Let us log traffic patterns, and we'll throw out what? 4 $250 Vandals or gift certificates at the end of to increase your participation. And now we've got that. That's just something I'm making up off the top of my head. Other devices, to go along with what this mobile app could potentially turn into. So like I said, I didn't want to diminish, again, what Vinny's done. This has been fantastic. This is just the stuff that we at SEAL talked about. And I wanted to tell all of you because, you potentially have opportunities to make decisions about these kinds of things. I have to kind of do it by proxy for you. So, Vinny, I'm going to give it back to you for the final slide.
So this is just a list of acknowledgements throughout this entirety of my project. Corey, you're at the top. You got me hired on, goes to Eric. He's come out with me many times during this process. He's seen it, especially when the leaves were pretty bad and I was sliding around one day. Amber, I don't know, she's not here, but Amber's been a big help, just knowing many of the issues and how to define them in verbiage. Nathan, he was pretty much the main one to point out that was pretty shaky video. And to me, that was really cool. It was like, okay. And then I re-recorded. It was a great suggestion and it turned out even better. And then of course, the whole Cedar Advisory Board for listening and being interested, that meant a lot to me. Just having that support was great and I loved it. My professor, Marky McBriar, she's a professor of political science here on campus. And before I even started this project, I was kind of talking to her about how can we address this throughout, the higher ups, I guess, on campus, and just had a good discussion about sidewalks anyway. Martha Smith, she was a classmate of mine, and she's been very helpful with ASUI in listening to these issues for me, and even recommending places for me to go check out sidewalk wise for students that she knows, which is incredible. Julia Stone, she's someone Eric and I have been working with for another map project, and she helped us create the metadata, which I used for that, and part of that metadata was involved with longitude and latitude, which I used for this project, so I felt I wanted to mention her as well, because she's been a great help too in this process. So thank you.
William's awesome.
Yeah.
He's super helpful with
Yeah, she's great.
metadata. Yeah.
I just want to throw out, you mentioned awareness, which gets thrown around and sometimes feels like it's great, we brought awareness, what do we do? But Really, so we finally, the sidewalk, the first one you mentioned, you know, that we got stuck on your first on the campus, that's been on our ADA advisory board committees for like 4 years, and kind of once we sent them a map with pictures and somebody that was actually impacted, it get moved forward, so it's kind of, you know, awareness feels like whatever, but like it actually did have an impact, so, and same, you know, we got approved for a new interactive campus maps. One of the parts of that was like you're talking about real time update, that parking can go in and throw up an announcement or an overlay that these streets are closed due to snow, don't park in this disability spot because that's where we're piling snow right now.
Did you just say that that's something you guys did get?
Yeah,
We got approved, so we're going
Nice,
through
cool.
it, but
That was
that's
one of my
kind of,
questions.
yeah. So and again, that was directly from showing people, Vincent's project to people being like, hey, this is an issue on campus. Not just in sidewalks, but in displaying this, like Vincent spent a whole semester putting this together. There's products out there that would do a lot of that for us if we had the data, and he's got the data now to dump in there, so. Just thank you for that, yeah.
I love it. I love it.
and it's, I mean, and honestly, and I've told Vincent this, I was like, Vincent, I think this is something that you could take and do at other campuses too. Because just the simple knowledge that you brought was, we were then able to, as you know, Eric said, it was on the Cedar Advisory, or actually the ADA committee, we talked about these sidewalks for a long time. And when that video came in and all the pictures and stuff, and we started sharing it out, it started getting pushed higher and higher up. And the reason we were struggling with sidewalks is because they were in front of our sorority and fraternity. Those are where they are, and so they are not owned by the university. So then it was like, well, it's not the university's responsibility, it's the sororities, and the sororities like, no, it's not ours, it's the city's. And so it became this circular thing, and I think I finally said, somebody just freaking figure it out. And so, but it helped to get Vincent's pictures in there, and then we finally made movement on this 4-year thing, because everybody kept kicking around. It's not the university, it's the sorority, it's the fraternity, it was crazy. So, I mean, I think that awareness piece was definitely needed. And as I tell Vincent this all the time, it is your lived life experience. We that are mobile and can walk, you know, we can say it's a problem, but until you actually have that put into your face by somebody who lives it on a daily basis, I think is really important. And my question to Vinny about the expense of his wheelchair is because Medicaid only pays for a new wheelchair every 5 years, I believe. And so if that $2,000 piece of equipment gets broken, one, Vinny's out of a wheelchair for a period of time while they fix it. And then he can't even get replaced for another, you know, he breaks it within the first year because he's going to a place that's not accessible. And so it becomes this huge thing, because nobody has $2,000 to pull out of their pocket, and that's actually relatively inexpensive for a wheelchair.
Right.
But I think, going back to, I think, Vinny, I still want to say it again, I think this is something that you could actually build upon. You're about ready to graduate, and you could build upon something like this and sharing this information to other campuses that maybe are having some of these same similar issues, and be like, here's a project I did.
You can turn it into like a consulting business or something.
Exactly.
Just
Be
go
one of
for,
those high paid consultants.
That would be awesome.
and you would just get to go to different colleges and.
And they have to fly you there and put you up,
That would
pay
be
you for
fun.
food. I mean, I just want you to hear that from other people, that I think it's a very valuable thing that you have walked through and learned from, that you could implement into
Right.
building your own business.
And I would love to do that, and I think the reason why I added the equipment slide too is to show how cheap it is.
Right.
And how even if I'm not at the campus, people there can still do it if they wanted to on their own. It's very easy, I mean, simple, it takes a lot of time, but it's doable. I think anyone can do it, and I mean, I would love to do it, you can pay me for it.
Well, and the way we did it is my office hired Vinny as a student worker.
Nice.
And so he did get paid to do this as a student worker through our office. And, you know, we have student workers all the time, and I didn't even bother to tell anybody. I'm just like, I'm hiring Vinny as a student worker, Eric. And he's like, okay, let's go. You know, and so we were able to pay him to do this project that I believe benefits a lot of people. So And then I think the map that the accessibility map also has been a result because of you. So if you take a look and consider the work that you put in and how the quickest movement I've ever seen, honestly, since I've worked here, these two big issues are on and they're working on curb cutouts. We finally got a grant. So they are gonna be working on our curb cutouts on campus and stuff like that, so.
Cause you said you started on this back in November?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really fast.
yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
know, it's really cool to see, honestly, while I'm here, I can see it come to action, and it means a lot, it's really fun. Really rewarding too, really exciting for the next generation of vandals too, and yeah, it makes me very happy. So I'm glad I got to be part of it and share it all with you.
Well, and it's timing wise good too, because we're just starting our next 20-year plan.
Oh,
And so some of the stuff in there, that's like, kind of one or two of the meetings, and like, yeah, no, that's, you should prioritize that, because that. Just closing certain areas that are streets now, making them more walkway, but then that would mean like streets level, so talk some of those sidewalks,
Yeah.
worry about falling off, so if we don't have a curb, you don't have to worry about
Honestly, I
curb
think
cuts.
It's true, yeah.
your beginning part of this presentation, I honestly feel like other people on campus need to hear. You talking about how the fact that you trying to go to class, you're scared you're gonna fall off a sidewalk. That to me is extremely powerful. And I don't know how we can get that in front of other people that need to hear that as how to that, I don't know, probably the first 5-10 minutes of you started was so powerful to hear.
This is just kind of like a funny idea I've always had. It'd be interesting. I don't want to do this because it'd be pretty risky, but I would love for people that are higher up and know what to do about this is to take my wheelchair and try to go across some of these
Do it
areas
themselves.
themselves, like
Live a day,
just see what it's like,
live a day all over again, right?
And
Vinny?
I'm sure, they'd be like, oh yeah, this is.
you could probably do something getting just like a regular wheelchair that's not electric, which would make it harder, so it'd be more impactful for the people, because they're having to just go through that with their hands.
LSB
And-
used to do something like that, which was the reason Vinny and I have known each other since he was like 15-ish.
Yeah,
He, when I taught high school, he was one of my peer mentors in my classroom, and I had an assignment called Live a Day. And so all the peer mentors had to choose a disability and live the day with that disability to the best of their ability. And I actually stole that idea from LCSC when I was going to school there in the 90s. And so which was why I brought that in, but it was very impactful for the students that did it. I don't remember, do you remember what you did?
I can't remember. I was like, I guess I already kind of have a disability, right?
Right. Oh, I think you actually, if I remember, you wrote up a report of what it was like
Yeah.
living with it on a daily basis, but I had students that would